When I was in high school, I had a teacher who wouldn't let me check out this book right here, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. And she didn't really tell me why I couldn't read it. She just said I shouldn't check it out. And I remember being very surprised, embarrassed maybe a little bit, but mostly very curious. It didn't really stop me from ever wanting to read the book, obviously, but it did make me wonder what kind of ideas were in this book that I shouldn't be aware of. Hi, I'm Deshelle from Literary Adventures for Kids. I am a language arts teacher, or literature teacher, and a writing teacher. But most importantly, I'm the homeschool mom of 3 who have all graduated, and I've homeschooled them all through high school. And I also teach a lot of teenagers, hundreds of them in fact, in my literature business. And there's one thing I've probably learned throughout the years, is that when you try to talk to a teenager directly about something that's hard or difficult, or maybe it's about like mental health or bullying or something like that, you don't really get much response from a kid, especially a teenager. They often will try to change the subject or maybe just give you a one-word answer. So just because really they don't want to talk about big feelings. And honestly, I totally get that, because most parents don't want to talk about big feelings either. Those are difficult things that we struggle with and we're slightly embarrassed to talk about. But what I have discovered is that you can talk about these things, but you have to do it in kind of a sneaky way. And the best way, I think, to sneak in these great conversations is by using a book where the characters are going through some of these situations. And that way, you, instead of talking to your teen directly about a subject, you can talk about what the character did in the book that maybe was about that subject. This book right here is a great one to start a conversation with your teen. In fact, just last week, I had a big conversation with my nephew about this book. He called me, well actually his mom called me, because he is working on his summer reading, and his teachers required this for his summer reading because they're going to be discussing it in class. And he really did not want to read it. He was very uncomfortable reading it. He said the language was making him uncomfortable, and the topic was making him uncomfortable, and he just didn't like it, and he didn't want to read it. And his mom was trying to convince him to read it, and why it was important. And so she called me and she said, can you help him understand why he should read this book? And I said, sure. So we started talking about it. We didn't talk about him, but we talked about the book. We talked about Jim. We talked about Scout. We talked about Atticus. We talked about why the author felt it was important that we needed to understand this situation. And we talked about some really difficult topics. We talked about sometimes reading things that make us uncomfortable is really difficult. And sometimes it's painful. And sometimes it helps us to know to empathize with people that we don't understand. And that's okay. And in fact, I told him, if you're uncomfortable reading a book, that means the author probably did a pretty good job. But real life isn't sanitized. It's messy. It's dirty. It's complicated. And this book is one of those examples of how life might seem to be a certain way, but then when you really dig deeper, it's messy and complicated, and it makes you uncomfortable. But that's okay, because we are reading these books and we're becoming uncomfortable. We're also stepping into the shoes of someone else. We're also empathizing with somebody else, and we can see those characters and the situation differently because of those characters. So reading a book with big ideas helps us to have big conversations. The same thing happened when I was talking to my daughter about a book we were reading, Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress. If you haven't read it, we read it in our world literature, but it's about the Chinese intellectual revolution. In this situation, the little seamstress becomes pregnant, and it's not allowed for you to be pregnant and not married. It's illegal, in fact. It's also illegal for you to have an abortion. It's also illegal for you to get married before the age of 25. So she felt like she was in a no-win situation. There was nothing she could do. And this gave us the great opportunity to talk about a very, very difficult subject. A subject I can't just bring up off the topic. Oh, hey, we're just going to discuss this, without getting some eye rolling and some running off to their bedrooms. But we were able to talk through the situation with this girl and how she handled it. And did we agree or did we disagree? And we got to walk a moment in her shoes and realize that maybe not every situation is black and white. Maybe not every situation is so simple to make the most moral, the most correct, the most perfect decision for your life. That maybe sometimes these decisions are very difficult, and it helps us to become better critical thinkers, to be better people who empathize with other people, to be better people who walk in their shoes, if we take that moment to walk in their shoes and see what that character had to go through. Maybe they made a decision we wouldn't, but we don't know because we weren't in that situation. Did you know that teen anxiety is climbing every year? And in fact, according to the HRSA, the teen anxiety levels have increased by over 60% in the last 10 years. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that I know a teen who isn't dealing with some type of anxiety. There's some books that might help you to talk about that with your kids, because you may not even realize that they're dealing with it. And maybe they're not dealing with it, but maybe someone else in their orbit is dealing with some issues that are hard to talk about. This is a great one, Speak. If you don't know the situation in this book, the character's going through some major depression and anxiety, and she deals with it by not speaking. And it walks through the process of her learning to cope. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This character is dealing with OCD, and she causes her to do things that she knows are not logical. They don't make sense, but she still has the compulsion to do them. These are not books that maybe necessarily have things that your children are going through, but it might be something their friends are going through. And you can talk to them about situations of how do we handle anxiety? How do we handle depression? How do we handle any kind of mental issue that maybe is not comfortable to talk about? This is a book with a big idea that helps us to start a conversation with our teens. This is what literature and big conversations look like at Literary Adventures for Kids. I don't give the kids a worksheet and say, hey, let's do this and fill out the little blanks. We have big conversations. We have book clubs where we meet every month and we talk about things like some of these books that I just mentioned. And we have these conversations that not necessarily I'm the one starting. A lot of times the kids are the ones starting. And then we have writing projects where they build on that. Because all of this is the basis of critical thinking. If we get our kids to thinking critically, to being able to really empathize with somebody else, then it helps them to be better thinkers altogether. It helps them to be able to have conversations that don't end in a screaming debate, but maybe a logical conclusion, or maybe a conclusion that you disagree, but that's okay. We do this in the Society for Literary Adventures for Kids. If you want to join us, hey, join us. It's free for a week. After that, you can decide whether you want to cancel or not, but come on in, join us for a week, see if you like it, and if you don't, that's okay. But if you do, stick around and we'll have some great conversations. We'll also read some great books. You can find out more information in my bio. Thanks for joining me at the TikTok Homeschool Conferences.